Hey everybody, Pastor David here with this week's Midweek Minute. So we're kind of in the middle of a series right now called A House That God Builds. And we've talked about a couple of different things. Number one, unless the Lord builds the house, the ones who labor in vain. And we've talked a little bit about the way that when God decided to build a tabernacle for Himself, a house for Himself among His people in Exodus chapter 35, He called for the resources to build that house to come from people whose hearts were willing to give those resources. And then this past week, we talked about the way that God not only invites the resources materially to be provided for the house, God then raises up people among the people of God who know what to do with those resources, who have the time and the talent that God has given to them, and whose hearts are willing to give that time and that talent to putting the house together. It's the way the church works. It's the way the church was designed to work. That the materials needed for the ministry that God is calling us to, God has already given us. And those materials are financial as well as time and talent. I shared with you this past weekend the insert, the pledge campaign insert, time, talent, and treasure. And the encouragement is that we would spend some time talking to God about what particular ways God wants us to give to the building of His house in the next chapter of First Church's story. And we have to first come to a couple of conclusions to do that. We have to be willing to admit that each one of us is an irreplaceable part of this story that God is building. That what each of us has been given by God is a critical part of this house that God is putting together. We have to then, once we trust that and believe that to be true, we have to discover what it is that God has gifted us to do and to be. And I shared with you a link to a spiritual gift inventory. And I will be sharing that a little bit more on my own social media pages as well as in the bulletin this coming weekend. So pay attention to that. And then once we've discovered what it is that God has wired us to be, who God has wired us to be, we have to say, okay, God, put me in the game. Show me where I can be part of this house that you are building. My hope and prayer is that you are giving some prayerful attention to that this week. This coming weekend, we wrap up this series. It's the weekend before Thanksgiving. We will take time to give thanks for the goodness of God in our lives and for the way that God produces in us grace upon grace, abundance upon abundance. And we'll have the opportunity to give thanks for that. I hope you can join us either in one of our online campuses or in person in one of our worship services. Until then, remember, keep looking up, and I'll see you later.